putting up funny package. It was like line of sight. We did this and we were amazed, like we got it.
He did like laser stuff there in the beginning. And what's really weird is my brother-in-law, who lives in Pittsburgh, is friends with her son. Like, how crazy is that?
Right, it is 7 o'clock. Okay, can you please take roll? And before that, welcome everybody. It is Planning and Zoning Commission, our meeting of February 27th, 2025. Okay, could you please take roll?
Yes. Nicholas DeFrank,
Present?
Jared Mork is absent. Jeff Davlin is absent. Nick Mission.
Here.
Kim McGee is absent. Cindy Saplesio.
Here.
Jesse Garcia.
Here.
Ann Krimmer.
Here.
Thank you, Kay. Consent agenda. Do any commissioners have any comments on the minutes that Kay took from our last meeting? It's been a while, but if you remember that meeting. All good?
Yeah.
I'll approve those meeting minutes then. Motion by Cindy and second by Jesse. Thank you all. Public comment for persons not on the agenda this evening. No.
Allie, do you want to take a moment just to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Allie Wetstein. I am the new boards and commissions clerk.
Oh,
So
all
I'm just
right.
observing and seeing how it all works. And hello. Nice to
Awesome.
meet
Thank you for your help, Allie.
Yeah.
Welcome.
So Allie's going to take on the majority of the other.
Yep.
As well as help Kay, MacNut, be back to the trustees as well. So, you know, we're trying to get some redundancies, so we don't have to have Kay do 42 public meetings per month.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yes. Is there anyone online tonight for us to be aware of?
No.
Oh, Jeff's online,
And Kim.
and Kim.
Good evening.
Hey, Jeff. And Kim. Kim, you're black and white and frozen.
Had so many problems, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, I was on here for roll call and I'm going, Kay, I'm here. Anyway, hi.
Hi, well, thank you both for making, for being able to attend this evening. Appreciate it. All right, so moving on, we can close public comment and moving into our action items. With that, we have one item on the docket tonight, 1348 Barber Drive, conceptual plan and preliminary plat. Jared, you want to take us in?
Yeah, give me a second. I'm gonna do some show and tell handouts. I apologize for Jeff and Kim, you guys online.
Thanks.
And then.
Let me just pass down, or is it easier for you to make a
Sure. You can pass that.
You should be getting, each person should have 3 items.
3 items. I will explain it all here in just a hot moment.
This one, all right. This one here,
Just need those two.
those two, yeah, thank you.
Got extras if you feel like you don't need them. Or if you feel like you have something or missing something. So, thank you guys. Thank you guys. I will try to be relatively brief. So before you guys tonight is a combined application for a subdivision conceptual plan and preliminary plat. And the goal is to subdivide, or the proposal is to subdivide an existing 4-unit multifamily structure into 4 individual lots, each containing one of the existing residences. As outlined in the memo, generally our development code kind of uses the conceptual plan, preliminary plat, and final plat processes for new subdivisions. Generally, things think of like Crystal Village PUD, RVR, stuff like that, where there's a lot of complexity that needs to kind of be addressed, and it gives an applicant the ability to come before the town multiple times with ever increasing levels of detail to make sure that they get all aspects of an subdivision kind of addressing what the town's needs and desires are. It's not really, the process isn't really designed for a 4-unit subdivision. But when we look at our other processes, a condominium subdivision and a subdivision exemption, this application doesn't really comply with either of those because it's not proposing condominium units, and it's defining 4 lots, which are subdivision exemption caps at 3 lots. So unfortunately, this process is the process that we have to use. And as you kind of see later in the staff memo, some of the review criteria for a conceptual plan and a preliminary plat aren't overly applicable to this type of an application. So just wanted to kind of put that out there so you guys all understood the reason why we're kind of here. For the overall process, a conceptual plan and a preliminary plat are approved and reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. A final plat goes directly to the Board of Trustees for review. So this would be your guys' one opportunity to review this application. And if you choose to approve it, then the applicant's next step would be to submit a final plat, the necessary documentation, and go to the Board of Trustees. Last night, we emailed you guys a letter from John and the applicant kind of outlining some additional comments and concerns upon reading the staff memo. One of those items was related to the process. And he kind of stated that he felt a PUD amendment would be an acceptable process. We discussed that with the town attorney today. And in keeping in line with our past precedent and decision on PUD amendments, we agreed with the staff determination that I made kind of before the application was submitted, that the applicant is not, or the application is not eligible for a PUD amendment because the PUD amendment states that 50% of real properties within the area affected by the proposed amendment need to be applicants or need to be parties to the application. In this case, I made a determination that the affected area is the residential multiple family zone districts, if not the entire Crystal Village PUD, depending on the scope of the application. Upon seeing the application, the affected properties are really that residential multiple family zone district. And so in order to process a PUD amendment, we would need 50% of all property owners within that zone district to be a party to the application. So kind of getting into the application itself, as outlined in the memo, the application generally complies with the comprehensive plan. You know, this lot is the last lot within the residential multiple family zone area, zone district PUD area, that is not subdivided out. I think one of the unique aspects of this and one of the challenges of the subject property is that a sizable portion of it is located in that north portion of the lot as Barber Drive kind of wraps around. And so there's a lot of lot area that's kind of, for all intents and purposes, you know, has limited applicability and use. And so as we kind of reviewed this application, that caused essentially the lot coverage for each lot to create some challenges. And so stepping back just slightly, Crystal Village PUD and the residential multiple family zone district uses area ratios to define kind of building lot coverage, how our UDC describes it. They break buildings out into 3 categories: building lot coverage, parking, sidewalk, and other paving, and then remaining open space. And they use a ratio of those 2 lots. And essentially it's 25% for building lot coverage, other improvements, 25%, 50% open space. Within that definition, the residential multiple family zone district includes in parentheses, including open space easements. And it's something very unique in the original PUD to this zone district area. And it's kind of one of the key aspects of this application, right? This open space easement concept is kind of what led the applicant to proposing an open space easement on the portion of the lot. And so the lots itself, as the lot lines are drawn without the open space easement, lots 1 and 4 would meet the buildable area requirements, but lots 2 and 3 would not. They would have too much building on the lots. So as we kind of worked with the applicant back and forth through this application, one of the things that we recommended or suggested that could be pursued is this concept of an open space easement, where you put an easement on one lot for the benefit of other lots, and that those lots could capture that area for their building area ratios. In the applicant's letter that you guys got emailed to you last night, the applicant kind of brought this up and had a lot of narrative about where it was included in the PUD and what they felt was the intent of it. Since that letter, we've looked through significantly more PUDs and plats, consulted with our town attorney, and determined that that open space easement exemption, I guess, or inclusion, wasn't just limited to this multiple family zone district. It also got added in 2 subsequent PUD amendments for the residential single family patio home area and the residential single-family 2 area. Those 3 areas make up what in the original PUD was the multiple family zone area. And that area had a large open space easement kind of bifurcating the entire area. And so when looking at that and looking at subsequent lot subdivisions, we felt that the intent of that language was really to allow those lots that have platted easements on the property to take credit for those easements in their areas and not be punished for those easements. It wasn't intended to be, we can take a portion of an open space area that's not on our lot and count it towards our lot for the purposes of lot coverage or building area ratios. And so I wanted to add a little bit of that. After kind of getting some more of that information, I don't think staff would necessarily support or pursue an open space easement as designed, but since we gave the applicant that direction early on and considered kind of the applicability of this, with this being the last lot within the subdivision, I do think it's fair for them to present this concept to you, and we don't have any kind of issue with the Planning and Zoning Commission considering that or supporting this open space easement concept. So I think one of the goals of the application was to really create, regular lot lines and not have irregular lot lines that create really funky backyards, front yards, things like that, and create very usable lots. And so that was, one of the main goals of the application, and kind of how the open space easement concept got brought up. In the staff memo, I included a lot of narrative about, a thought on how this open space easement should be allocated, and maybe that it should be allocated equally across lots 1 through 3. After some further conversation, we kind of view this open space easement more similar to, say, a common element of a condominium, like a limited common element where you have the right to use a portion of the common area and that's solely yours. And so what's presented before you, where this open space easement is only allocated to lots 2 and 3 and not to lots 1 and 4, is something that is a concept that I think we can support from an allocation standpoint. So I just want to kind of clarify that within the staff memo. When kind of fine tooth combing these numbers, we did find that lot 1 was about 42 square feet short in lot area as currently presented. And so, if the P&Z were to support this, we would recommend that those lot lines be adjusted to ensure that there is compliance. And that's a pretty minor adjustment to those rear lot lines, most likely. So I think this open space easement concept is maybe a little difficult. I think you can see kind of its growth in it's kind of how it changed and what we just handed out to you guys. Essentially, the 3 stapled together and then the 1 handed out is kind of essentially the order at which these concepts were brought forward to town staff. In the first version, version A, you can see that there's an open space area across the rear property lines. And the intent was to kind of capture that entire area and calculate it towards each lot. In the second concept, version B, that's a demonstration of how these lots could be subdivided without an open space easement and meeting those building area ratios. And I think that kind of shows some of the funky lot lines where lot 2 has a, trapezoidal shape rear yard, lot 3 is even different, and then lot 4 doesn't really have much of a rear yard, but has a significant front yard. And then version C is what is in your packet as attachment B. And that's with this larger front yard open space easement, and you can see the area ratios there where the applicants kind of allocated that open space easement to lot 2 and 3. And then the fourth one that was presented or handed out to you guys is what's in the initial or in the revised application, which is attachment A. And that shows more of like a pseudo L-shaped open space easement. And that was something that the town discussed or that I discussed in the memo, where the applicant proposed basically taking that entire area, 825 square feet, and counting it towards each of lots 1 through 3. And so I believe, and John and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think what the applicant's proposing today is option C.
Roughly square foot.
Correct. Yeah. So that's the one with the 1,100 square foot open space easement. Yes. Except for D, because I ran out of time, but yeah, so I just want to make sure maybe that's kind of summarized for you guys. So really, I think before you guys tonight is this concept of an open space easement. And really it's up to the P&Z to determine, do you find that the inclusion of an open space easement on lot 4 is an acceptable method of providing additional open space to lots 2 and 3 to help those lots meet their area requirements? Also, are you guys comfortable with the assignment of area ratios where it's a portion to lot 2, a portion to lot 3, 0 to lot 1, 0 to lot 4? And then lastly, are you guys comfortable with the shape, the location, the intended purpose of the open space easement? So I think those are really the 3 big questions. And if you guys are comfortable with each one of those, I think you can find support with this application. I think if you're hesitant about those, I'd recommend giving the applicant feedback, continuing the public hearing, allow the applicant an opportunity to revise their application, address your guys' concerns, and then come back with a compliant application. One last thing I want to highlight that happened here this week is in the staff memo, we talked a lot about utility easements needing to be platted and highlighted a concern about Excel Energy's referral comments, where they kind of made a comment that stated that maybe these utility easements would have to be relocated. Mike worked with Excel Energy, provided us documentation. Excel Energy is accepting of kind of the version C as presented, with platted utility easements being provided where those main lines come from the transformer to the meters. And so we believe that has been addressed. And so that's comfortable. And again, there's 2 actions before you in your packet, either continuing the application or approving the application through resolution 2. John and I did find a few errors to the resolution. And so what's before you here is kind of a red line showing you some changes to the resolution. So if you guys were to approve that, I'd recommend working off of this red line version. I've got a clean version on my computer, but there was some grammatical errors in there and some additional clarification that was beneficial. So just wanted to let you guys know that. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Otherwise, I'd be happy to give the applicant an opportunity to kind of present their application to you.
Thanks, Jared. First, I thank you for staff being so diligent on this, and I appreciate the kind of the process, the attempted creativity on a non-traditional, non-standard scenario.
Mhm.
So thanks for walking us through that. That was a mouthful, folks.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of check in with this commission first, and please, put a hand up if something isn't quite adding up. again, this is non-traditional, so this isn't an area that we typically have seen a lot of applications, number one, but number two, the site condition and what's happening here is also not something that we've had a lot of experience with. So if anyone needs a clarification or anything else to kind of become more familiar at the onset of this, please raise your hand now, ask some questions, allow Jared to kind of help you into this. And yeah.
You said that all the other lots in the PUD that could be turned to townhomes were, that they didn't have any other wonky lots in the entire area that had to be dealt with?
No, and you can see it on the zoning map, and I know you're a little far away from there, but
I have it pulled up.
the purple, or adjacent to the purple, you have the residential multiple family kind of
Right.
around Barber Drive. And the lot lines kind of throughout that subdivision, there's a lot of very irregular lot lines and weird shaped lots. There's one that almost looks like a fish hook adjacent to it. There's others that are kind of straight and then step over. There's some diamond shaped lots, or lots with kind of a 25-foot strip and then a diamond in the back. I would say the lots that tend to be on the curve of Barber Drive tend to have the funky lot lines.
Mhm.
And then those that are on the straight portions of Barber Drive tend to be rectangular lots and have very, very straight lot lines. This is on that side of the street that is the straight portion of Barber Drive. It's just at the end of it where so it's kind of like that in between lot of the two. So hopefully that answers your question, Ann.
I just wonder if any of the other lots had this issue, and it doesn't look like necessarily they were as oddly shaped as this one in terms of the front yard.
Yeah, I can't speak to the order of operation for a lot of them, but it seems like a lot of them maybe were built and subdivided at roughly the same time. And so then maybe there's a little more intention
That's what I kind of
behind
wondered
it, as
if it
opposed
was
to built as a
because this one's
multifamily
later.
structure and then subdivided years down the road.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Cindy, Jesse, Nick?
I can clarify, but I think I know. So the open space easement is only being divided between lot 2 and 3, taken away from lot 4. And
Correct.
nothing to 1 because it meets,
Correct.
okay.
That's what's
just
being
checking.
proposed.
Okay.
Questions on my end?
Kim and Jeff, anything from your guys' side over there?
Not here, thank you.
I want to make sure that I'm looking at the right thing in the packet. Is it, Jared, tell me which document it is. Is it the pink and green thing?
So there's a couple pink and green things. So attachment B to the packet
Okay. All right.
Well, they do have the packet, they don't have. they don't-
is the,
They don't have the packet that's handed out.
no.
These things are in the packet.
Attachment B to the diligent packet
Yeah.
is what is what the applicant's proposing.
Okay.
Within attachment A, I think it might be exhibit I or something like that, or K. There's a zoning compliance site plan in there, and that was a previous iteration of
Okay.
the open space easement. And then I can try to forward you guys right now the version B that I kind of presented to them with the lot lines that would comply, so that you guys have those.
Okay. So there's something a little bit different than what we're seeing. Is that right?
Well, that's only from a previous iteration, so that's more
Okay.
for conversation standpoint than what they are actually proposing.
Okay.
Jared, I only have one question. Well, I guess we're gonna call this standalone option D, is that fair?
Yes.
The only difference I note in option D from D to C is that the open space easement shrinks. Okay, maybe I missed it, sorry if I'm why is C still the preferred by the applicant as opposed to D? What is it that,
So I can let the applicant speak towards that. I think one challenge with option D is that open space easement across the rear of the property, or the open space area across the rear of the property. I don't know if how the calculations necessarily, wait, no, D, sorry, D, the difference is that open space area, 825 square feet,
yeah,
was not enough to make lots 2 and 3 meet the zoning,
so the shell game
because
doesn't
the
work.
challenge was that open space area was being counted kind of like duplicate and triplicate times. It was being counted on each lot to help those lot areas meet the ratio, as opposed to saying it's counted once and it's divided up among those lots. So that's the difference between C and D.
I'm gonna get noted. Thank you. Any other questions? Are we good to let
Quick
the
question here. Usually an easement benefits a third party. Is that correct? So who's the beneficiary of the easement?
Yes, so in this case, the easement is on lot 4 and it's for the benefit of lots 2 and 3.
And how do they benefit?
And I'll let the applicant speak to it, but what's being proposed is they benefit by having access to additional open space. What's in their application is it could be garden space or private park area or something like that, but that's part of what the Planning and Zoning Commission needs to determine is
shared outdoor space?
Is that shared outdoor space?
Is it only accessible by lots 2 and 3, or is it open space and accessible by everybody?
That is for you guys to determine. As it's presented and proposed, the easement is for the benefit of only lots 2 and 3. And
Okay.
so in theory, they could say, put up a fence around it and lock the fence, and they're the only ones who have the keys to it.
Right.
How would it be written in the title? As open space or as easement for the benefit of lots 2 and 3?
I would let the applicant speak to that.
Yeah. Why don't we- So I think for us to understand is it allows the math to work.
Well,
right?
then
And
I
they're
think,
gonna walk us through.
then I think it may, okay, thank you for answering the question.
Thank you. Good? Yes? All right, gentlemen, you are up.
All right, thank you. I think Mike, you can go ahead and share the screen.
Maybe start by introducing yourselves for us if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, my name is Mike Eaton. I'm the owner of 1348 Barber LLC, which is the entity that owns this property. John Peckler, my attorney. First of all, thank you, Jared. That was extremely thorough. And I feel like I don't need to present anymore. But I can touch on a couple of things. Whoops. Let me just share my screen real quick. There.
Thank you, Kay. You read my mind.
Sorry. We're good here. Yeah. Okay, so this is the GIS version I just pulled off of Garfield County, highlighting the specific parcel. We're obviously proposing to subdivide into 4 lots. It's 4 total townhome style units. Each one is basically the exact same in regards to specs. They're 2,080 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms, 3 levels. They each have a walkout basement into the backyards. They each have a 1-car garage, and then they each have a driveway large enough for 1 car. Background on 1348 Barber, it was previously owned by the same owner for about 25 years. He had rented it out, obviously, as a, fourplex, 4 different tenants. The majority of those tenants had been in there for, actually, when I purchased it, the tenants had been in there for 10 to 15 years, all 4 of them, except for one who had been evicted because they didn't take care of it. I purchased the property in March of 2023. The property's condition at that time was almost uninhabitable. The roof was leaking in a couple of spots. The attic spaces were, every single attic was full of mold. Every single unit smells like animal urine and smoke, or smoke, I should say. And then every time there was a rainstorm, the basements would flood. So when I took it over, it needed a ton of work. Since we've owned it, we've made a lot of extensive repairs and improvements. New roof and gutters. We mitigated all of the mold inside the house and in the attic. The interiors and exteriors have been painted. We've installed new exterior railings that are metal and cost me a fortune, but it replaced the wood rotten railings around those stairwells going to the basements, and then made various landscaping improvements. For example, around the transformer, there were massive juniper bushes that were overgrown. We ripped those out, repaired all the grass that was dirt, basically. It just wasn't grass. You can see these are some before images. The one on the left that's the location actually of where the open space would be. The middle is the center of the building up on the roof. That's where the major roof leak was, is right where those 2 roof lines connected. And then the right photo, you can see those are the overgrown bushes that we ultimately removed this summer. And now it's just the transformer and fire hydrant there and some other utility looking box that don't know what it is. This is the backyard. The photo on the left, this is the photo of the entire backyard of all 4 lots combined. The center, this is the before photos of the center of the building in the backyard. You can see one of the old railings there. And then the lot 4 backyard. This is the lot that is going to be most affected by the lot lines if we don't use some type of creativity to give them an actual backyard. This is if you take 2 steps off of that back patio right there, then that's approximately where you're going to be standing on the property line. So these are some of the after photos. Unfortunately, I am terrible at taking photos, and these are the only 3 photos I have of the building since we've painted and done a bunch of work. The left photo, this is the new metal railings. These are all as strong as you can ask for them. I spent probably 4 to 5 times more on these than I would have on the wood railings. The middle photo is just some workers replacing some of the trim. You can see the fresh coat of paint on there as well. And then the right photo, this is just another shot of the new paint that we have on there. The middle photo, actually, while we're on that, you can actually see a little bit there. You can see the new roof on, new gutters that we had installed. This is the roof project that went on. I waited 6 months in line to get the roof completed. And of course they chose January, right during a storm, to rip off my roof after I mitigated all the mold. So this was exciting. Anyways, there's the new roof. It was all metal before, and the problem with the metal was every time it snowed, it would send it down, and it was dangerous more than anything. So we replaced the metal with asphalt shingles, and also that decreases your future maintenance on the building, as I'll get to later. That's also why I did the beefy railings on this left photo here. Ultimately for decreasing future maintenance. The 1348 Barber project, I probably don't need to go over this because Jared covered it thoroughly, but it's here, so we will. Currently, the property is a 4-plex on 1 lot. All units are rentals. We're going to subdivide the lot and create 4 individual townhome style lots. After that, I'm going to finish rehabbing all of the units. And then ultimately, depending on when the project's completed, the goal is either rent or sell. Those are all obviously my only two options, but it's just gonna depend on what the market's doing at that time. If I can't sell, then I'll rent. If I can sell, I'll probably sell. Benefits of the project, ultimately, create more for sale units for the working class. I should have started off with, I'm a broker in the Valley. I've been selling real estate for 8 years. I understand the real estate market throughout the whole Roaring Fork Valley really well. I've been a top producer in both companies I've worked for over the last 8 years. And majority of my clients are first-time home buyers. As I don't remember if I said, but John and I both grew up in Basalt. We graduated from Basalt High School in 2008. So extremely familiar with the area. I'm extremely familiar with first-time home buyer and working class type clients. I've got a soft spot in my heart for them because it's extremely difficult to get started here, as everybody here knows very well. So ultimately, I saw this opportunity. I want to create more housing that people can own, because one of the best ways to get your foot in the door here is to own property and build equity instead of paying rent. So one of the things to keep in mind, new construction right now is too expensive for a developer, or for really anybody, to build a quote unquote, first-time home buyer type home. The reason being is construction costs are too high and the property's not worth what it costs them to build. So no developers want to take that risk, and no profit margin. You're not going to work here for 2 years and get paid $0, right? That's the exact same concept for them. They don't want to build this. What they are building, and I'll get down to it later, or actually it's right here. What developers are building right now is high density multifamily apartments, because they can rent that, and that does pencil out for them, or high-end luxury homes, which obviously working class and first-time home buyers are not affording those units. We're talking $2-3+ million here in Carbondale. That's not a starting home price. So I basically just covered this whole slide, but ultimately each unit is 4 bedrooms, and talked about that before. Most units being built right now also are either 2-bedroom for those apartments. Most of those units being built are either 2 bedrooms or studio apartments. These are all going to be 4-bedroom units. And then, oh yeah, and then I literally just added this. That's why I don't remember it. The 4 units, it's a small number compared to what the RFV needs, but ultimately it's 4 more units that the Valley needs that people can own instead of rent. The project goals, obviously, other than creating the working class units, I want to create family-friendly lots for all 4 of these. I look at the front yard of lot 4 being the only realistically, usable space for that lot. If we can't use this open space concept, and unfortunately, I just don't think most families would appreciate having their kids play in the front yard on a fairly busy street. Barber Drive is one of the most crowded streets in all of Carbondale. When ultimately they could have a backyard where one day they can have a fence, their kids, dogs, whatever, can go out there and play. So that's the idea, but ultimate idea behind this is create family-friendly lots for all 4 units. And then the other goals are reduce amount of general property maintenance. That's why instead of doing metal roofs, I did the composite shingles. Instead of doing wooden railings, I did metal railings that, like I said, probably cost me 15 grand more than the wood railings would have. The cost of living in this valley is already extremely high to start off. So by reducing maintenance for them in the future, it just makes it easier to live. It's just too expensive as is to start. So that's the reason why I'm kind of beefing everything up. And then obviously replace older features with higher quality and lower maintenance materials, which I just kind of covered that. Go on, next one. Then the current issue at hand, the strict application of the Crystal Village PUD area ratios would force lot lines into neighbor disputes. I anticipate someone in lot 2 or 3 down the road just going and because they can and hanging out in that open space constantly and ultimately being a nuisance to lot 4 because they can. Is it likely gonna happen all the time? No, but the way I'm hardwired is I try to see in the future what kind of problems there might be, what kind of drama it might create, and I like to do what I can to avoid that. So obviously I don't really like the idea of the open space, but at least it gives them a backyard. And whatever we can do to avoid this version B, that's ultimately what I want to avoid right there. So lot 4 would suffer from the irregular shape of the property. It's forced to sacrifice most of backyard to lots 2 and 3. Lot 4 has irregular shaped corner that is impractical for yard space. And its overall square footage that is used for the lot coverage ratio. Plat that meets Crystal Village PUD area ratios. This is that version B that you have in front of you. This is ultimately what we know we could get approved, and I just absolutely hate it. Our ask is to extend the lot lines to go straight back in the backyard. Provides all 4 units with reasonable backyard space for kids and pets. It's safer for kids and pets. Allows future owners more space. Sorry, I'm gonna move this. More space for gardens, swing sets, trampolines, whatever. Overall functional. It's a more functional site plan. The Crystal Village PUD allows use of open space easement to satisfy requirements. Without open space easements, lot 4 would have only a front yard on a very busy street for kids to play. Lot 3's backyard would completely surround lot 4's backyard. This is the proposed plat where you can see the lot line just go straight back. This does have that open space up there in that little corner. This is ultimately what we would like.
Just for clarification, that would be, I believe that's the
Option C.
option D, I think.
Mhm.
That would be option D, which is the new color one. And we could talk about the 825. I'll talk just a little bit about why it's 825 and how that might work and how you could think about that a little bit differently, but.
Sorry,
let
yeah,
Mikey-
I should have clarified on this. I put this in here as more of a conceptual, so you can just see the idea of the lot lines. Didn't mean to throw a wrench in there. So this is the desired plat ultimately with the house. Same exact thing, just has the townhomes on here. Actually, this one doesn't have the open space. Obviously, I'd love to not have the open space, but if that's what gets us to have these shaped lots, then that's what I would like. And this is where I'm gonna let John take over. But since we brought up real quick before you do, since we brought up the other Barber Drive properties that have irregular shapes, I already kind of prepared that. I want to show you guys here. So properties 1328 Barber through 1338 Barber, that's 6 units. These are all 6 of them here on this corner, right here on this bend. All 6 of them, they're exact same dimensions. They're 1,056 square feet, 2 bed, 2 bath. And then the last one that's, pretty irregular is this one, which is literally, you can see 1348 Barber in the top right corner. This property that I'm talking about is right in the middle. That's that fish hook one you were talking about, right? This one to me, when I see this, I'm like, yeah, everybody around them has a backyard. I would have probably done the same thing there. But if I go back up to, oh, gosh dang it, sorry. When I go back up to this one, sorry. These are all tiny 2-bedroom units. These are likely not going to have a large family living them, right? So yeah, you can see they had to sacrifice backyard here on a couple of these for sure. And they only have front yards. But at the end of the day, these are going to be primarily used as rental properties in the future by owners. they're not gonna be raising large families. As we're a 4-bedroom, over 2,000 square foot townhouse is likely gonna have a family with multiple kids, and, all 4 of them have that chance, good possibility. And that's why ultimately these, I can understand these ones not having as much of a backyard space because of the dimensions of the units. But for a 4-bedroom townhome, it just makes way more sense to have an actual backyard. So, okay, on that note, I'm gonna let John take over. And take over on the options for satisfying the Crystal Village PUD requirements.
Yeah, and thank you, commissioners, for letting us present this tonight. And a big thanks to Jared for clearly a ton of hard work and research into the Crystal Village PUD and what's happened over time. It's a very old PUD, which makes a lot of this a little bit more challenging to find records. And so I guess, like, if you go back to the Fishhook property, I know we've talked about this one a lot. And one thing I do want to point out about this is if you have the application in front of you as part of the packet, it is Appendix D, which shows the sort of initial subdivision of this area into blocks that have been further subdivided. And when you look at block 15, which is where the Fishhook is, that, I think a fair bit of this irregular shape comes out of the strange shape of the block to begin with. The block, even before it was subdivided, kind of already had the Fishhook piece going on. And then I think, that other really strange pattern of lots you see, that's part of block 25. And like some of the other ones, it's on, a curve. And it would be very hard, even to draw straight lines and have buildings on there. I think it just would be a little bit difficult. I don't know, maybe you can do it, but I did just want to note that we do talk a lot about irregular shaped lots as evidence of compliance with the area ratios. And, I wasn't part of any of those projects, and they may have happened a long time ago. And I do think, at least a little bit of it is driven by the very unique layout of these blocks. They're not, very square and uniform just because of the way this area is laid out. So, just a little bit of additional information to consider. I know we talked a lot about those irregular shapes. And so we were there, wanted to bring that up. And so just by way of introduction, Mike and I have known each other since we were playing soccer as little kids and graduated from Basalt. So, we've been here a long time. We really love this community. He's really passionate about this project. I hope you can tell from the way he talks about it. And so I'm, happy to help him and try to find a way to make it happen. It sounds like you did get the letter I wrote yesterday. I apologize, it was very long. That's what lawyers do. We think and write a lot. So, at the end of this, I'm very happy to answer any kind of questions you have about what's in there. If there's anything that doesn't make sense, you want to know more, happy to address any of that. And I'll try to really just quickly summarize kind of the key points of that letter here for you really quickly. We've really, talked a lot about it, but this is a really unusual application before you. You have a really strange shaped lot or block. You have existing structures and appurtenances like the driveways. I think as much as anything, trying to keep what's on the ground functional is kind of the key concern here. Obviously we could tear everything down, subdivide it however we'd like, and start from scratch. But, I don't think there's a lot of benefit to doing something like that. So we are trying to find ways to make this happen. And, we are, and a lot of what we're talking about today is, we've tried really hard to find ways within the town's code and the Crystal Village PUD to sort of get to a really workable and livable result. We're not trying to get a loophole or an end run around. We really have gone through a lot of iterations of analysis and ideas and proposals to try to come up with something, that staff can support, that, we can get behind and, feel like it's good for families in the future, and, kind of avoiding, disputes where we possibly can. And, so it's just sort of a long way to say, we didn't just walk in the door and say, aha, gotcha, open space easements. This has been a very iterative process with town staff, and we've really looked at everything we can do to make this happen. And, we've talked a lot about PUDs so far tonight. And I know, unless you're a real land use nerd, PUDs is not something you talk about very often. It's a little bit of a foreign concept. Just PUD 101, it was.
This is the Planning and Zoning Commission, though.
Just
Just as a note.
Yes,
So-
you're right. Yeah, these are my people. Thank you.
Yeah.
The real, and when you look at the PUD Act that was passed, I think not too long before the Crystal Village PUD was actually adopted. So it was very shortly thereafter that the Crystal Village PUD was approved. That you read the legislative intent, and I think it kind of sums it up really nicely. The idea was encouraging innovations in residential, commercial, and industrial development and renewal so that growing demands of the population may be met by greater variety in type, design, and layout of buildings, and by the conservation and more efficient use of open space ancillary to said buildings. And so, the PUD process just overall was designed to create contract zoning where, the zoning could be really tailored to meet the needs of a specific project where, the existing zoning regulations might not work as well. And that really was the idea. And, the real intent of the PUD Act was to allow for flexibility and lot by lot ideas and modifications to make development functional and innovative and kind of go forward. And so I think, this open space concept is certainly not typical and a little bit out of the box, but I think it really does fit within the idea of a PUD and what they were really created for, and, allowing flexibility in innovative zoning. And, Jared brought up the minor PUD amendment process and what the town attorney's position there is. You may have read in the letter, we think that interpretation is maybe a little too restrictive. And I only mentioned it in the letter just as another example of what have we done? What have we looked at to get here? And, we really thought a lot about it. So, we recognize and understand the town's current, interpretation of that and how it's been applied historically. And, it just isn't, we're not going to be able to get 50% of the signatures in the Crystal Village PUD to try to do that. It's an old, fully developed PUD. That would be a ton of signatures. And, really the amendment we would really want to seek would only apply to our property and wouldn't really affect other properties. And so, it just would be very hard and expensive and probably unattainable to actually get that done. So then that kind of leaves us with this whole, how do we interpret inclusion of open space as written in the Crystal Village PUD and apply it to this project? And, we went back and read the PUD documents, identified, references to the Rockford Ditch open space, this open space buffer. We didn't look any further at some of the other single family plats Jared had mentioned. But when we really looked at it, it seemed pretty clear when you follow through, the way that the land use acreage tables are set up, and then the actual PUD plat that's of record. The Rockford open space ditch is in the middle of the multifamily area. That, open space buffer easement is sort of in the, I guess it'd be the southwest corner. They were all kind of laid out within and as part of that multifamily area. And, I did think a little bit about, what Jared mentioned and said, oh, maybe the intent of this really was lots that are encumbered by the open space easement should be able to take credit for it. And the reason I don't think that was the intent is because a lot encumbered by the open space easement wouldn't need this additional language to take credit for the open space easement on the lot. It would just be, by definition, a part of that lot would have to be open space. You don't need additional language to say you include that open space, because your lot would just necessarily be open space in the area encumbered by the easement. So that's why that's why I don't think the original developer in the town thought of it that way. And I think they did consider it as this regional open space easement is laid out and, you know, going to be for the benefit of this multifamily area where you're going to see higher density, and that, you know, that higher density is going to get the benefit of a regional open space corridor. And so that, you know, that's just my read of it. You know, 1977 or whatever is a long time ago, so we won't know for sure, but I think there is a reasonable argument to be made that, you know, they intended these multifamily lots to be able to take credit of regional open space, and specifically the two open space easements that are called out. And then if you do allow that as the open space for the calculating these area ratios, the benefit you get is you can take away on lot or in track open space easement, and you can kind of avoid some of the concerns about, you know, maintenance, ownership, use rights. You're now just relying on the regional open space that is there. It's for the benefit of everyone. It's being maintained. It's being taken care of, but getting the benefit of that, you know, in their neighborhood. And I think that just, it's a really nice, neat outcome for everybody. And, you know, I think there's a reasonable argument to be made to support it. So, you know, we would love if the planning commission, you know, would really think about that and, you know, take that into consideration and, you know, see the benefits of putting open space in the regional open space as opposed to the in-tract, and sort of relying on the analysis of the PUD document, kind of in light of the idea that that was to create flexible zoning and maximize the most efficient use of open space. So, you know, that's one way of.
So
thinking
your
about it.
specific request here, sorry, you just to kind of reel it in for a second.
Yeah.
What is the specifics that you're trying to request at this point, or what are you trying to draw a line to?
Yeah, so I think what we're trying to draw a line to is probably two different options for the planning commission. I think, you know, we have, you know, this idea of including Rockford Ditch open space easement and regional open space. You know, we haven't really had the opportunity to work with staff on this. You know, we kind of mentioned this late in the game. They were, you know, I think understandably very skeptical of it because it's a really weird kind of concept in a traditional sense. And, you know, so we, on our, you know, after we had an opportunity to meet with Jared, you know, had looked into it more and kind of thought, you know, I think there really is a real argument here to be made. So if you think that that's a really viable path forward, then I think our ask would be maybe continue this hearing, let us work with Jared on how would we actually implement including regional open space in lot area calculations. You know, it's a little weird. I think we would want to work with Jared and find out how would we do that? What does that really look like, you know? And so we don't have an answer right now, but if that's you know, if that's what this commission would like to see, then we would be, you know, more than willing to work with staff on, well, how do we implement that? Because we don't have the answers. I mean, I think I have some ideas, and I think Jared has some additional information that, you know, we haven't looked at either. So, you know, there could be more to be discussed. And so that's sort of one option. If the planning commission, you know, finds that that's just going to be unworkable and not going to work, then I think our other, you know, the alternative ask is what I haven't really talked about, but would be, I guess it's exhibit or version D, version D of what was handed out today, where there's 825 square feet. And, you know, we recognize there's an element where some of the same area is being counted more than once, but our position is, you know, that area is being counted more than once because that area can be used by more than one person. And so the area is being counted by each person that has a right to use it. And so when I say that, I mean, this open space easement will be for the benefits of lots 1, 2, 3, and it's obviously on lot 4. So lot 4 would be able to use it. And the way we think about it is a traditional easement is basically a right to use and enjoy the easement area. And so because each of these lot owners have a right to use and enjoy the entirety of the open space, they should be able to take credit for that. If lot one has the right to use and enjoy all of the easement area, but is only allocated 25% of it for the purpose of these area ratios, that's basically discrediting 75% of their easement. And that we think that your easement should be considered in full. Your right to use should be fully accounted for. And we recognize that does lead to counting the same thing more than one time, but it's because there are separate and distinct individual rights to use it. And I know that's a little weird and hard to wrap your head around, but that's the way that we're thinking about it. I think the second you start saying, lot two, you have the right to use the whole easement, but you only get credit for 25%, that's basically saying you only have, your easement isn't really what it is. And, we don't think that fits with traditional property law concepts and principles. Your easement is your easement, and it's a right to use and enjoy the full entirety of the easement. So, if we are looking at doing on-lot easements, open space easements, I think our request to the commission would be, we'd like you to think about this as not so much as here are the number of square feet on this lot and they must add up to 100. We would like you to think about it as, what does each lot have the right to use and enjoy, and think about that. And then you do it lot by lot and you kind of get where you get. And I think kind of what's underlying all of this and kind of what's really hard here and what's making this challenging is, as it sits today, this lot with the building complies with all these ratios. It's really only as a result of this subdividing we run into all these problems. And so, we can do all these things and move things around, but we're not changing any conditions on the ground. There's going to be no increase in allowable development if you go with one easement layout or the other. The lots are in compliance now as a whole. And, we think if you continue to think about it as a whole and you kind of have that in mind, I think it helps sort of say, we're not giving a free pass to increasing development and density and things like that. We're trying to preserve what's there in recognition of this really unusual and unique layout and the fact that there are these existing buildings. And so with that, happy to answer questions, give it back to the commissioners. I guess, but one last thing, if the commissioners do find that the easement has to be allocated among the lots and are comfortable with that kind of a concept, then, I think, what is this, option C? We could live with that. We find it a little harder to justify that because, you're just kind of making up what easement goes where. And, we don't think it's very practical to say lot one couldn't use the open space easement, but the other two lots could. And then lot four is encumbered by the easement. So, they're the owner of the easement area, they're the burdened property. They'll always be able to use it. So trying to say that they don't get credit for it, it feels a little strange. But, if that's what helps here, and Mikey, maybe I hope I'm speaking correctly, but I think we would, in the interest of getting this kind of really important project done, we could work with that.
Okay, thank you for the presentation.
Do you want me to unshare my screen?
Yeah, please, we could get Kim and Jeff back here. Great, thanks. Questions for the applicant? Just turning back to the commission now. Jeff and Kim, I'm gonna start with you over there. Any questions, any thoughts in hearing that for the applicant to start before we discuss amongst commission?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Thanks, Jeff. Kim, you good for now?
I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, thanks. All right, commissioners here present, any questions for the applicant before we discuss? Just
I'll go. Could you guys clarify why you weren't in favor of version A? Does that meet the, or is that why you're not in favor? Because it doesn't meet the open space?
You know, that's a really great question, and I believe this is the open space easement in the backyard.
Yes, sir.
I think this was kind of I don't remember, maybe the very first iteration where we kind of worked on this with staff. And I think we all kind of ultimately ended up having kind of concerns about, you know, access. If you were actually to put up fences in the backyard, how would you realistically ever use any of the other open space easement? And then we thought, well, you know, does it make any sense? And thought, you know, it would be better to move the open space easement to somewhere that's going to be a little bit more readily accessible. That's why it ended up in the front, is because you can access directly off Barber Drive. You know, our kind of concerns ultimately with this configuration were that you were going to have this weird space where people would put fences and you would end up having a tiny little strip that may not make a lot of sense. And then I think, I can't remember exactly, but I believe the calculations are something similar to the calculations that kind of support Exhibit D or version D. I keep calling them exhibits, but yeah, version D. I think that's kind of the same thinking here. The problem just was the math's a little more complicated because each lot has an easement and you got to account for the other easements. And, you know, once you start having to do adding and subtracting more than once to get to the answer, I think you might have made it too complicated. So by consolidating the easement space to one lot, it just made it a little bit easier to understand and apply.
Well, and also to add to that, lot 4 ultimately was the one with all the extra square footage. And when we were talking with Jared and staff, we were needing to use the square footage from lot 4 for lots 2 and 3, ultimately to meet that lot ratio. And so that's why we moved it to the front, because the front, we tried to use as much of the setback as we could, that you can't build anything on the setback anyways. So that's why ultimately we transitioned over to lot 4 entirely.
all right. Any other questions by the commission? Thank you.
Just real quick, I'm struggling to understand, and forgive me, maybe I'm missing something, but who benefits from this easement? Is it the entire community or is it just lots 1 through 4? Because it's defined as an open space easement, which has the same definition as the other open space easement, which is open to just anybody. Anybody can use that. So in theory, can you just elaborate on that? Because
that's a great question, and you know, something we've kind of, you know, because this is sort of very unique and different. You know, we've talked with Jared a lot about what is it for? How does it work? You know, the way that we've thought about it now is it is limited to the use by lots 1 through 4. It would be, you know, kind of like a quasi private open space, kind of like a common area element on, you know, like I don't know, like a shopping center or, you know, apartment complex would have a common area courtyard that you could use, you know, the unit owners could use. You know, the open space name kind of comes to help make the connection back to the PUD and kind of go with, you know, what we thought, you know, worked with the PUD. So that's really what our thinking was. And, you know, the benefit, you know, we've kicked around a bunch of ideas, like, what do? Do you make community garden there? Do you just make it a nice landscaped area and kind of fence it off, and you put a bench in there and people can, you know, sit there and hang out in the front and kind of just enjoy it. That's the thinking. Yeah.
So so if I'm hearing you correctly, it really is technically, as it's currently defined, open to anybody who wants to use it. And, or you could change it you can call it some other type of easement, I suppose, and something other than open space, just like, subdivision. I don't know what you would do. You'd have to redefine it to differentiate it from the other one. And then, so just leading up to the next question, I'm sorry. If it is in fact defined in the same way as the other open space easement, then by that definition, anybody in the community could use it to offset their ratios.
Yeah, and I mean, that, I think if that was the way you were gonna be thinking about it, then, these lots would then be able to take credit for other regional open space as well. I think you can't quite have it both ways, maybe,
Right.
so.
Well, yeah, that's like kind of where
Yeah,
I'm going with it.
right,
Like,
right.
I think we need to somehow find some other name if we're gonna do this, and this
Go
is
this
what
way.
you in fact want to
Yeah,
do.
sure.
That we should somehow define it differently than open space easement. That's the only, and that's really my only question. It's not a question, but.
No, it's an excellent question, and, I think we tried to address it in, we thought with the, the covenants that would be recorded for this property after the subdivision, there'd be some covenants and restrictions, and obviously a party wall agreement, because there's, these shared walls. And, we thought, oh, we'll really get into the nitty gritty of the uses and way that this, how is it maintained? How is the maintenance funded?
Just to stop you, just specifically, that easement would be for lots 2 and 3. But in option C, but in option 4, it would be shared by all 4 lots. That's why I just wanted to go back to the next question. In the interest of time and respect for this process.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
I think that would be correct.
Yeah, I think we just got to reel it in a little bit.
Yeah.
I appreciate the discussion, but wanted to answer the question.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, appreciate it.
Okay. So, any other questions by the commission for the applicant at this time? Good? All right, so with that, a time for us to talk.
Public
Yes.
hearing.
Oh, yes. Motion to close the public. Open the public hearing. I'm sorry, I didn't think we had anybody online, so I was moving right past it. Thanks for the catch, shared.
No worries.
And we still have nobody online.
Barb, iPhone, if you want to speak,
There is somebody up there.
could you raise your hand? We just allowed to talk and see if she.
I'm gonna take a guess and say that is my mom tuning in. She's probably at home over in Blue Lake, wondering how things are going. So I don't, there could be another Barb listening, but I would guess that's my.
I wasn't gonna say anything.
No worries.
Cool. I run into that. All right. With that, I'll take a motion to close public meeting.
Second.
Motion on Cindy, second on Nick. Thank you. All right, commissioners. Who did it start?
It's a legal matter.
Doesn't it feel like it?
I have a quick question for Jared, probably, Nicholas. The requirement for this open space is coming from the PUD, is that correct?
No, the opportunity to pursue an open space easement is coming from the PUD.
Okay.
The requirement of area ratios is from the PUD, and the reason of utilizing this open space easement is to attempt to make the area ratios work for each of the 4 lots.
It may be spoken in one more way. The open space is a tool made available.
Yes.
By the PUD as a way, and then this applicant is trying to use that tool to help with the balancing of the lots.
What Nicholas said.
Okay.
It was.
I'm really struggling with the definition of open space in this scenario, because for me, I can see how the open space designation on the front of lot 4 would benefit the neighbors, and just even if it's just to have space, work for your dog walk around the block. But I would say that's a very limited value to call that that little tiny corner on the turn with the sidewalk open space. And it just doesn't function like the other open space, even in that neighborhood. And then if I'm following maybe with option D, where all the open space is stretched across the 4 backyards.
That's A, but yes.
Okay, A, yeah. That to me is, it's just something I cannot get behind. If we were going to go and label that open space where it's basically like a 6-foot strip with a privacy fence to your neighbors, I think it's pretty disingenuous. So I'm struggling with the terminology is the summary of my comment, but I think I'm trying to understand what is the complex relationship between these area ratios, and I would love any help that my fellow commissioners can lend in this discussion.
It's a good question, Jeff. When I kind of previewed this with Jared, the way that I kind of the words I used, and where you say it allows for a bit of a shell game, right? The tool of the open space. The term does not really make sense. As the applicant said, I think it is a term that comes in the PUD, and so the term, the tool, come by way of the larger kind of guiding document, but it isn't quite the same thing as what we see over on the front end by the ditch. That is truly can be shared by the community. In the sense exactly. It's more of
the function of that open space you can understand. The function of a random corner of sod in front of lot 4 is open space that I can't really understand the real value of. And I would almost rather have the private landowner be responsible for taking care of that front yard than to label it open space and have it suffer tragedy of the commons, or just being abandoned. But that's just kind of my gut reaction to this whole discussion, is the simplicity of the lot lines that the applicant is suggesting is what resonates with me.
Kim, or I'm sorry, Jeff, was that a segue?
That's great. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Jared, can you remind me, in the option where the lot lines just go straight back, and then we have our wacky little triangle out in the front, which really is small, what's staff's opinion, or staff's, not your opinion, your stance on that arrangement, that option?
And Kim, you're referring to the option without any open space easement, correct?
Yes, actually, I think so. Where the lines just go straight back. There's no weird shape to the lots.
Yeah, in those situations, staff stance is that lot 2 and 3 do not meet the building area lot ratio. They exceed it. I think I put in the staff memo, it was like 29% and 30% as opposed to the maximum permitted 25%. And so we would view that as, by approving that plat, we would be creating illegal non-conforming lots. Right. And that's not something that we can or should do.
Gotcha. Thus the open space proposal.
Yes.
Thanks.
Jared, would this be considered common space for the unit, for the 4 units more than open space? And then could they share that among them? Because I agree, the open space to me is like the park, the ditch, something we can all use. This is for the use of these 4.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I think the term open space was really utilized just to tie the area to the PUD. I don't think we would have an issue calling it private common space, lot 2, lot 3, I think we can massage that terminology and then in a plat note, highlight that that is
Shared between.
open space for the purpose of area ratios or whatever that might be. But yeah, I think the terminology can be massaged from open space to
Yeah.
common area if that's something that would resonate better with this commission and the applicant's accepting of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can call it, something else that doesn't carry the same, weight of open space. That would be completely fine with us.
When we had open space thrown in there, it wasn't like, we were like, this has to be open space, but ultimately a conversation starter for us to figure out how we can,
Sounds
use
good.
this land.
Great. And Jesse, Nick, who wants to go next? All right.
I'm struggling with the open space, whatever we call it, just because you're creating 4 separate properties. And it's like, I'm gonna go hang out in my neighbor's yard 3 doors down because I have legitimate legal access to it. I think it's just kind of weird. I wish there were a way that we could say, no, lot lines are fine. Let's override and give them non-conforming lots, but we can't. Is there any other way of divvying this up that doesn't require open space? If they were condos versus townhomes and had the whole front yard as a common area, but platted backyards that they're allowed to fence, does that change anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think the applicant is more than willing to pursue a condominium subdivision application. I just don't think that that is their desire to sell off condo units with common element.
Right, I mean, it makes it somewhat harder. I had a townhome that was not a PUD. The front area was shared common areas. We had a HOA. There was only five houses in it, 5 townhouses in it. I mean, it's doable. I mean, if that solves the
Well,
problem.
I think we should probably keep it to what the applicant is.
Yeah,
going
but does
after.
that solve the problem? I guess if it were, a different use application versus trying to make 4 lots.
It could, simply it could, it's really just, it's whether the applicant wants to pursue that or not.
We have thought about that. The cost associated with creating an HOA, possibly remetering everything is what kills that, doesn't make it possible for me. So that's why I'm not approaching it that way.
Do you have to change that you don't have to now?
It's not part of an HOA, so we have to create all the HOA docs. I mean, we in Excel, who knows, they might still allow us to do this and just utility easement to it, but it's just the cost associated with creating an HOA and all of the HOA docs and everything that is going to be required for that ultimately is what puts this, it puts it out of budget and nobody can really do it, is what's happening. So that's why we want to go with the most simple, well, hopefully simple solution, but obviously it's not as simple as we'd like.
Well, and I think, again, the applicant said it, in their kind of closing, this was simple until they chose to divide the lots. So it is by their choice that we are here to figure out a way or help them figure out a way to subdivide 1 lot into 4. So, so just to kind of go back to that, and we are doing what rather than giving an option that isn't being applied for. We're gonna stick to what is being applied
Right, I
for.
understand. I was just,
So,
it was feeling untenable to me, and I knew that other things existed that worked around that, and I was just trying to figure out why.
right.
But is there any way you can apply for a variance of this requirement within a PUD to make it less?
Yeah,
in
they
certain
could apply
instance?
for a variance. I think the challenge would be, how do they prove a hardship that's not by their own making if they're the ones creating the lot lines? And I think that would be a pretty difficult argument to make, and a difficult finding for the Planning and Zoning Commission to come to grips with. And so we did kind of discuss that option, and I think we kind of said early on, maybe it's not worth pursuing, but yeah.
The only other thing I would add to, the kind of the issue with the variance is, the variance is really intended to grant relief from the requirements of the town's code. And the requirements that are really at issue here are in the PUD, which sort of replaces the town's code. So it just was a tool that didn't fit, and that's what led us to think about the minor PUD amendment process, because that would be able to give us relief from this PUD requirement. And then, the issue there is the way that is interpreted currently by the town, we could never meet that burden.
If I may.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what the applicant wants to do.
Sorry, Nick, I can't hear you.
Sorry. To me, this is, what, if this is what the applicant wants to do, I don't necessarily see any particular issue with it. I do think that maybe the wording is problematic with open space easement. But if they want to create an easement that's attached to lot 4, I see it as an encumbrance to lot 4. I see this in the future as being trailer storage, that lot 4 is going to have to look at, it's going to be trailer storage for lot 1, 2, 3, and 4. But lot 4 is going to be encumbered with the appearance of trailer storage in the front of their house. But I mean, from a planning and zoning perspective, as a planning and zoning commissioner, I don't see any issue with this.
I think it's a fair statement, Nick.
It's kind of funny that you would, get a nice open space easement in front of your house and then have it end up being an encumbrance.
Well, I think and then I guess to dig into that for a second, for all of us to think about, option B, although irregular, is oddly the cleanest, right? Is it the preferred by the applicant? No, we understand that. However, it is cleanest, and we have irregular front to back yards, but each person has their piece of land, and there is no flex on that. There is no question about who owns what. Now moving on to C or D, the lines are technically cleaner on a kind of a policy, not a policy, on a kind of a yard by yard or property by property basis. However, on this, I think it's something for us to kind of drill down into now, to kind of come down into a kind of a more granular level. Kind of because of what you said, Nick. If we are in the end opening up a precedent to kind of allow this tool to be used and then renamed to do this, a move like this, number one, how's it delineated? Is there a fence that separates that off? Because it clearly can't just be imaginary lines, like it is on this page today. There has to be a delineation of some level. Number two, is there some sort of ruling on that, kind of to Nick's point? Can it just become trailer storage, and therefore what is the weight on lot 4? And then to kind of circle it all the way back around, is that weight on lot 4 truly any less than the idea of a small backyard?
Right.
And I guess on the other end of the spectrum, sorry, I'm a little disorganized here. If it is more of this common space, if we're talking about safety, which I think we heard on Barber Drive being a highly used street, which I think that's a subjective statement. There are a lot of cars parked on Barber Drive. I think those of us that know that street. But it's not exactly a fast moving area. I mean, by putting the common open space on the street and in calling these family lots, assuming kids or families are going to use them, is that the safest move that we would want to reinforce or support? So I think there's two levels to this that I think this commission needs to consider. And that is, what is actually clean lots? Is it about the alignment of lines that fit with the architecture? Or is it lines that keep ownership clear? And two, if this commission wants to delineate, wants to move toward that C or D option, if it chooses to go with the clean lines according to the structure on the property, which would then lean towards C or D, how would it, or how do we feel about delineating that shared common space? I'm going to rename it just for clarity, on lot 4, because as Nick kind of brought up, I think, and I hadn't even thought of that, but I mean, it truly could just become vehicular storage. We know how that, I mean, already the precedent for parking on street in this neighborhood. So that was a lot. Anybody, I mean, feedback to that? I'm just trying to kind of like grab what I kind of have heard so far and summarize and spit back. So
If I may,
yeah,
Jared,
please.
just to clarify, option B would still meet the intent of the PUD with that option would still be.
Correct. Option B with the, for lack of better terms, irregular lot lines meets the area ratios. Yeah.
Okay.
And, maybe there's something that could be done with lot 4 to turn that rear lot line into a little more of a right angle to get it a little more functional. There might be some slight wiggle room with where those lines are drawn to still meet that. But yeah, as drawn, version B is intended to be each one of these lots comply with the area ratios.
Understood. Yeah. And Nick, just to follow up on your comment, I think, yeah, life safety definitely comes into play. So I understand the common space wanting to be put on that corner section of lot 4. I do know, however, that there's a park right down the street. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard the applicant in the beginning mention the intent was because it's a 4-bedroom townhome, they want family kind of set up. The backyard would be suitable for lot 1, 2, and 3 from option B, and for the family in lot 4, maybe they use the park if the front yard is not favorable or the backyard is, like you said, 2 steps out from the back door. But yeah, Nick, I agree that future homeowners might look back on what we approved tonight and kind of complain as to why it got approved the way that it did if it does become trailer storage and lot 4 has to deal with it.
I mean, I was just thinking about, honestly, I hadn't even thought about any kind of storage. I was just like, okay, there has to be some sort of fence there. What kind of legal kind of scenarios could be opened up to, if I'm owning lot 4 and there are people hanging out on this thing in my front yard, not only is that just kind of odd in my mind, I'm sorry to make this, I guess, a little bit human or personal, but just being real there for a minute, but to go kind of one step further, if something happened, how does that work? So there has to be a fence, there has to be delineation on some level. And then this just kind of further compounds itself into it's kind of an odd scenario, just to make straight lines, whereas it seems like what we're calling irregular lines, or they're just irregularly shaped parcels. And there are irregularly shaped parcels in the subdivision already. And so this isn't exactly a crazy idea to make this fit again in response to what this applicant's trying to do and to divide this lot.
It's interesting that version A shows the utilities. And
Yeah.
there appears to be quite a bit of utility running underground along or inside of
Oh, yeah.
version D's open space easement. I just wonder if the applicant was thinking about utilities when they drew the easement to maybe just kind of, again, like you've got a utility easement probably for those utilities. We may as well just combine the easements and access utilities over the open space easement as a killing of two birds with one stone, so to speak. Could you please,
Yes.
okay, so there's some logic behind the open space easement geometry, and option D and what they're doing there is trying to combine two easements into one. So, you know, they're never gonna go away from the utility easement, so they may as
Right.
well.
But a utility easement doesn't mean that your whole neighborhood can come hang out in your lawn.
That's true.
You know,
That's true. Yeah.
So just to be real with that, you know, it means that a service provider can come in, or, you know, those other things that we all know about in this commission. But Kim, I haven't heard from you at all. We haven't heard from you at all.
Well, you kind of have. First of all, I really appreciate the conversation. I think everybody's brought up some very interesting, thoughtful points. And I just really feel like if you're selling something, you know, from a real estate perspective, people are going to really want to know where their lot line is, you know, is there a fence, is there whatever? And I really feel like option B, where it's very clear what your property is, I think that's the cleanest, and I think that's the direction that I'm leaning toward, just to kind of jump ahead a little bit. I think that, especially when you're over there at that space and that weird, funky triangular thing, that just doesn't really sit well with me. I don't think that's going to be good over the course of time. So that's my thought.
Right. Well, there's also, we had to talk about maintenance, right? Like who maintains that and how does that work? So I think, you know, there's, and we'll come back with these questions to you. But yeah, thanks, Kim. I appreciate that. I find it's kind of ironic how the irregular shapes feel clean.
Yeah.
Only in Carbondale.
Yeah. And only if you're over there looking at it do you really get the feel for how weird that front is, but.
Right. Jeff, circling back to you, seeing if you had any other, if you wanted to kind of put anything else out there, thoughts after hearing all the conversation.
Yeah, thanks. I think I'm still really sympathetic to the applicant here and their desire for a comparable backyard in lot 4. So if I had to like rank my options, I'm leaning away from the irregular lot lines and either toward one of the open space or common space solutions. I'm still struggling with the semantics of it. Like I would be disappointed to see on our zoning map this strip of so-called open space shared among 4 backyards. The corner of open space actually makes more sense.
Yeah.
In the front, but yeah, I don't know. I don't have any real clear objection to even a variance and non-conforming lot sizes in this particular scenario. Not to give Jared and the rest of our staff a headache. I am swayed by the so-called marketability of clean straight lot lines with comparable backyards for a building that's already built and you know, to the applicant's point, we're not going to see a lot of change on this property, no matter what we decide. It kind of is what it is. We'll see 3 new fences pop up in the backyard. If they're straight fences, I'm sure all those four tenants will feel like that's a fair solution to some degree. But yeah, those are just my thoughts.
Thanks, Jeff. So if you're leaning toward these straight lots, then how would you propose to delineate or handle the common or shared space on lot 4?
Yeah, I would leave that to staff and the applicant to figure out, like, if what is it? The version A is the narrow strip of open space in the backyard.
No, I think we're talking about C or D.
Okay, well, I see version B is irregular, version A has open space in the back, and version C has open space in the front. That's just by the labels that Jared emailed me.
Yeah, I only sent them C. So the difference, Jeff, between C and D is the size of the open space easement and whether that open space easement should be counted in its entirety for each lot, or if it should be split and only counted a portion of it for certain lots.
Okay. So I don't think I can see the option D, so apologies for that.
And maybe, is anybody, I mean, I would defer to staff's calculations on this one. Does anybody want to, on this question, for us to discuss calculations, or do we want to put that on, just let's kind of.
I would like to just emphasize that if we are in fact defining it as open space, then everybody in the PUD would then technically be able to offset their floor area ratios because of the open space.
I think we would change the name to common or shared common space.
Yeah, well, in that case, then maybe they do have a case.
So I think my concern with counting it multiple times in its entirety is that you're setting a bit more of a precedent where another property could come through and say, we're going to plat this front area as open space or common area or whatever you want to call it. And it's going to be 1,000 square feet. And then each of our 4 units are going to get to count that towards their area ratios. And then they could do an addition in the backyard, or they could then build on. And I think that's the concern I have with the double, triple counting it versus saying, look, it's a defined amount of space and how you want to split it up is up to you, but we're only counting that square footage once. And so you can allocate it to somebody else, but you're not going to be able to count it twice and then give a property kind of a development bonus, if you will.
Yeah, I hear that 100%.
Yeah, I'm not really into the double counting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, I mean, it's not like you're making any, it's the legal math. It's not to say that it's not important. But there's really no change to the architecture or the,
Okay, so Jeff is leaning toward a C or D. It sounds like not wanting to comment on delineation or function of the shared space. So far, we're hearing pretty loud across the board. Open space is an inappropriate term, and that can't be used. Kim is leaning toward option B, irregular, because it does actually provide in some ways the cleanest solution. Everybody has their contiguous parcel, and that is their space. There is not a kind of you use the term shell game happening where there's a kind of a shared space off lot, not connected. So bringing it back here, Anne, do you want to share where you are leaning on this?
Even though B is weird, the whole having other neighbors having rights to part of your yard is just, you don't get to pick who buys lot 1 or lot 2. And I think for community unity, a wonky backyard might be better than, hey, you have the loud neighbor that likes to have a drink at 9 PM in the front yard, So, and that's why, and it's also not doing any creative math to calculate a common area. And it's also not setting any precedents for the PUD or other PUDs. So it is unfortunately not ideal for lot number 4, but it's probably the cleanest from what I see.
Which one?
B.
Version B with the strange lot lines on the backyard.
Irregular parcel shapes.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I see that project there.
And again, I think we keep, assuming it's an inconvenience, perhaps, if we're gonna go into like anecdotal, like conjecture, maybe someone in lot 4 is like, man, I really am psyched that I have this huge front lot. We really can't play that game, right? That's not up to us to crystal ball this thing, as we try to remember on this. So, but it is like, so I think too, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anybody here that disagrees with you, Jeff. I mean, the idea of like straight lines, generally even lots, is that kind of the common sense scenario that is not exactly in our bucket of tools. And so thanks, Anne, for that. Cindy?
I'd say, I agree with Jeff about 100%. I think C makes the most sense. I don't think that should be open space, but common space for sure. And define maybe how it's used to some degree. And also, I don't like triple line, using the open space 825 3 times. That doesn't make sense at all to me. So I think C is where I would go.
All right, thanks, Cindy.
I'll go, and I think I'm in favor of option B, because I know I heard the applicant say that although 4 units being added to the inventory of the town of Carbondale housing isn't much, but I would say the use of 4 bedrooms in this townhome is going to heavily outweigh the purchase benefit that you don't get in the backyard. So 4 bedrooms, and I know the applicant also mentioned some smaller irregular parcel shapes on that PUD on Barber, and there were 2 bedroom, 2 bath, if I remember correctly. And I understand they eliminated the backyards maybe, or they sacrificed a little bit of backyard on those irregular shaped parcels, but they got 2 bedrooms. And so that's just what they had. But with option B, like I said, although you get the irregular parcel shapes, you do get 4 bedrooms overall. So that's why I am in favor of option B, because it also, you have the option of the park right down the street from you. So
Miners is right there.
yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it. Nick?
Precluding the versions that would be problematic for staff, I would, in my view, leave it up to the applicant to choose whichever versions they want to do. That said, if it was me, I would go with version B, because good fences make good neighbors, and you can do that here. I think that little common area is going to be problematic.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yep.
So right now, I mean, it feels like B is kind of like what it clearly is the overwhelming majority of this commission. So I think, and correct me, I think that's where staff was leaning as well on this one. Is that?
I think you guys kind of hit the nail on the head, right? Like there really are 2 options. B is very clean.
Yeah.
I think we had, questions and concerns about how the open space easement would work, but, are open to the concept so long as we're not artificially inflating the size of the lot. So I think, you know, we're open to that. I don't, you know,
Right. So I guess we have what, 1, 2, 3, B, 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 B. I mean, we had what, 5 Bs and 2 Cs. I mean, I also was leaning B, the idea of putting a potential conflict zone in someone's front yard. Felt like a challenge to me, for a neighborhood of this density. So I think, how do you want us to bring this one forward, Jared? Or bring it in for a landing?
you know, I think it's worth, you know, offering the applicant an opportunity, you know.
Continue.
Yeah, I think so, but I'd kind of ask them, you know, if there's, you know, I think the resolution could be, you know, revised and conditions could be revised to say, you know, option B is what you guys are gonna approve. I think there's no huge harm in kicking the can down 2 roads just to clean up the documents, make sure that we all have an opportunity to read, you know, the conditions, make sure that everyone's on the same page and bring it back to you guys. But, you know, I wanna at least hear from the applicant, make sure that, you know, they would be comfortable, if you guys took action, or if they would prefer, you know, a continuation, see if option B is even something that they want to pursue. Said, hey, for you guys to take action, close this, if it's gonna, preclude them from pursuing a different option, have to restart a process with you guys.
All right, that is fair. And guys, I mean, I think just to say, I mean, I think, you know, common sense is, and this one is challenging, right? It feels like, yes, according to the architecture, the structure's on the site, that it wants to be one way, and yet there is this overarching kind of guiding document that is saying something else. And I think what I have heard tonight and what you've all heard is the idea that there is, you know, kind of moving something kind of non-contiguous off is what I think is causing more challenge for this commission than an irregularly shaped lot, which feels, again, a little counterintuitive. Just to quickly summarize. So, and per what Jared said, I think you guys have heard where this commission stands. So to give you a chance to, let us know how you would like us to move forward with this. But I think right now we are recommending option version B. If you want to huddle up and we can continue this to give you time to go back and look at things, or if you want to get things settled tonight, that is, I think, where we are at with this.
I just got a couple questions for you guys real quick.
Yep.
First of all, this is my first time being part of a public hearing, so I apologize if I'm making this go on longer by asking these questions. If we kick this can down the road, approximately how long does this process take to maybe come up with a new term for this space, instead of obviously open space is a term that even we agree is not good.
I don't think it's the term it's holding. I mean, that could be isn't what's holding things up tonight. The term could be changed as part of this. I think it's the cleanliness of the contiguous parcel versus the idea of putting a multi-shared common space on someone else's essentially front yard.
Yeah.
So I think our options basically, we can have them approve B and be done, or we can, come back on the 13th. If we are able to make any tweaks to B, or there's something about it we don't like, we could represent something in the nature of B again.
Yeah.
So it's kind of up to you.
I guess, Jared, maybe would one option be we get approval today of B, subject to kind of some fine tuning of the lot lines, provided that it, meets the intent of B. Because I think, maybe there's a way to change the angles or something a little more palatable. I don't know how much flexibility there is, and I can't do these drawings, so. That might be something, and Mikey, only if you really want to, we could get approved today, not have to continue and come back, but we could work with Jared a little bit on, at a final plat stage, exactly, how do these irregular shapes play out?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think it's a good question. How does staff, is that something that you'd be comfortable with or that we're allowed to do? I mean, there is some tweaking that's available here, clearly. There are 2 angles and 2 alignments that could be modified to provide different shapes in those lot 3 and 4 backyards.
Yeah, I think, as I threw that out, I actually thought, I do think maybe continuing this for 2 weeks would be the best course of action. It's not intended to delay anything. I think there's 2 main benefits. One, it could give you guys an opportunity to potentially tweak that alignment slightly in a way that's better. But most importantly for this commission, it would give us the opportunity to clean up resolution 2, the findings, the conditions that address the option B version, as opposed to, as I read it, I think there'd have to be a lot of wordsmithing here right on the spot, and it could lead to a very clunky resolution.
Yep.
And I think that might be it might be more hurtful to the process than helpful, just to save potentially 2 weeks. So
Yep, I think that sounds like a good idea.
yeah, that would be, and I do think, we could be back in 2 weeks. I don't want to speak for them and what it would take with True North, but even if we came back with a resolution that approved version B, to answer John's question, I would still feel comfortable with minor tweaks to that at the final plat application. Because again, I think it is still very much in line with that option, so.
Right. Logistics, is there space in 2 weeks? Are we making a promise here that we can't?
No, I think if the goal is really to approve a cleaned up resolution, then yes, I do think there is space in 2 weeks. We do have another hearing, but I think it would be a very quick agenda item, and they could likely attend virtually if they don't want to come back up or whatever that might be.
Right.
I'm 5 minutes away. I'm not.
Other than that, it's just a matter of Rodney's time. Is he going to be able to?
He's fast. Yeah, I'm not worried about Rodney.
He is.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, gentlemen, I think you've kind of heard and I think you've interpreted kind of the options ahead of you pretty clearly. So Mike.
Yeah. I mean, my understanding is I think everybody understands where I'm coming from. And I appreciate everybody listening to us. I think that ultimately we're probably I would like to go with option B with the opportunity to at least maybe reconfigure some lot lines. You guys all brought up super valid points. Some of them that I hadn't thought about, Miners Park being down the road. Obviously that is a nice solution for this, but still kills me to have these janky lot lines. But I think we'll probably go with lot B, and if we can just have a continuation so we can possibly readjust lot lines. I don't want to have a battle on this when ultimately I don't think we're going to go anywhere.
Right.
I don't know that would be a battle.
Yeah,
I mean, we'd be sitting here arguing about a new possible zone to throw in as I don't think that's going to happen. So.
Okay, well, thanks for being clear on that one, and thanks for kind of coming to that. So with that, do we need to motion on continuing?
Yes.
Continuation, okay. So
It's the first motion on page 5.
You want it?
Staff report.
who wants it?
You ready?
Ready?
Move to continue the public hearing for a combined application for subdivision conceptual plan and preliminary plat for 1348 Barber Drive to March 13th, 2025.
Second.
Anyone?
Okay, Nick had it and Sydney seconded it. All right, thank you, gentlemen.
All in favor?
Oh, yeah,
Vote.
all in favor, voting, yes.
Aye.
I see
Aye.
hands on Kim, thanks, Jeff.
Aye.
And all present, yes, aye. All right, passes unanimously. All seven, lucky number 7.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Yeah,
gentlemen.
thank you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate
See you in a
your
couple
time.
weeks.
Sorry to keep you,
It's all right.
No, it's
keep you so long.
nice work.
What we're here to do.
Appreciate it.
All right, moving on. Staff update.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Ally.
She
may Again. not
come back after.
I know.
But she might, who knows? Yeah.
I might join the committee. You never know.
Other than that, I think you guys might have seen a press release, but if you. I think you might have seen a press release, but if you did not, our town manager has submitted her retirement. Resignation, I guess, retirement. So she's gonna move on to less stressful skies, I guess. She'll be with the town through June. And the trustees have already begun a town manager search. They're interviewing recruitment companies, and we'll go with one of those. I have no clue what the process will be. It'll involve people and questions, and there will be a decision made. That's about all I know. So yeah, so that's some information. I think that's probably the biggest update. We do have a public hearing scheduled for the next meeting. Ellie is diligently putting together a packet for the Carbondale Clay Center for the revision to that. So that will be the main item of discussion, and we'll obviously have this back at the next meeting. And then I believe we have identified the 27th as a canceled meeting due to everybody going to Cabo for spring break or something like that. So yeah, I think that's about it on staff updates. I don't know if you guys, you have anything else?
All right.
No? Fantastic. Do you guys have any updates? Are y'all gonna be here at the next meeting?
Yeah.
It's great to see everyone,
Yes,
except the weak link, Jared.
daddy duty.
I know.
Daddy duty. He's been good though, so it's if he has to miss one.
Yep. Speaking of, yeah, so we are down a commissioner, as you guys all know. Candace had to resign due to health issues. So we are gonna likely put that back out and try to get that filled, but given the timing, we could be down until May when the next appointment round comes up. We'll kind of see how that goes.
Got
Need to
it.
speak with the powers that be, but given what I heard at the last Planning and Zoning Commission Board of Trustees joint work session, we are going to try a Planning and Zoning Commission interview first, and then send the applicants up to the Board of Trustees for a final interview and appointment.
Okay, great.
How that's going to work out, I'm relying on Nicholas to figure that out. Yeah, we'll chat about it more once we know if we have more than one applicant.
And I assume you'll reach it back out to all the folks that.
Yes, who did not get selected last time. Yes, we've already had one person who's applied, so.
Okay.
And one of the people who applied last time, so.
Great.
That's a step in the right direction.
Okay. Hey, everybody, thanks for, I think a really thoughtful conversation tonight. I mean,
That was a very interesting application. It was intriguing.
yeah.
That was a good one. I like that.
Score one for the planning and zoning geeks. It was good, and I think it's interesting how, you know, B feels to me, it still feels like the non-common sense solution, but in the end, when you think about the kind of the human element and all the other things, it kind of just, it somehow becomes clean.
let's not talk about the application without the applicant here.
Right. Sorry,
But
guys.
thank you.
Thank you. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
You don't need more minutes.